This is the strangest Mihawk theory you have ever seen. In fact, it might even be just the strangest theory you've ever seen, full stop. But the truth is often stranger than fiction, even if it is fictional pirate truth. And in 3 short steps, I am going to convince you that Dracula Mihawk is not what he seems, and he is in fact a completely different kind of something. Notice how I said something instead of someone? That's foreshadowing. Speaking of strange truths, this video came about because both I and another YouTuber named Parvision stumbled upon the same idea that Vanderdecken is a literal mushroom. I have a whole video on Dude in a Room explaining that situation if you care, but in recognition of our mutual madness, this is something of a collaboration. You can see the original idea on his channel. It goes into a lot of the finer details, and you can even hit that funky red subscribe button while you're there, because he's a pretty cool dude. Plus, here's the video cited in APA just to make sure that there's no credit confusion this time. But step 1 for blowing your Mihawk mind brains. All objects have a will. One Piece is a strange series for many reasons, but one that always sticks out to me is the fact that Roger was able to eavesdrop on conversations between rather large stone cubes. The voice of all things, like literally all of the things have a voice, and some people can hear them. Now in reality, that would be cause for concern, but in One Piece, that makes you the Pirate King. This extends further into the concept of the breath of all things, which famously allowed Zoro to cut steel due to the rather creepy concept that all objects were breathing heavily onto him. But also many objects have unique personalities. Eiichiro Oda loves personification and has given personalities to a wide range of items, including Luffy's straw hat, Kaido's club, and even Yamato's side boob. Granted, these are mostly for comical effect. Or are they? Well, yes, obviously, but things can be both funny and relevant at the same time. It's like the entire premise of my channel, I hope. For example, Oda's personified Wado Ichimonji takes on the appearance of a young Shimotsuki Kozaburo, the man who crafted both it and Enma. Now, we currently have yet to see Enma personified. Or have we? Look, maybe. One of the big mysteries remaining after the end of Onigashima was the Grim Reaper encountered by Zoro. Now, the popular train of thought at the moment is either 1, Zoro would be trippin', or 2, that this is the spirit, will, or personification of Enma manifesting. And Parvision in his video mentions that this thought is starting to taste a bit like bleach, which, isn't great, because that's a substance that humans should not ingest. But this leads nicely into step 2 of our 3-part master plan to ruin your mind brain. But first, I have a dog. And I wanted to make my dog a very flamboyant Scottish lord. A very unique problem, I'll admit. But the sponsor of this video, Established Titles, has just the right solution. It's a project based on a historic Scottish custom whereby landowners are referred to as lords, lairds, or ladies in English. And you can officially change your name to all of those titles on stuff like credit cards. It's amazing. And I have invoked this mighty power to have my anime villain dog officially declared as a lord. It's all right here on this incredible piece of proclamation. So look, you'd best refer to my dog via his proper title or else face the consequences. Title packs give you at least 1 square foot of dedicated land with a unique plot number on a private estate in Edelston, Scotland. It's a great last-minute gift for loved ones, liked ones, or even your enemies. Go ahead, make them a lord. It'll confuse them. And I've been told that everyone who uses my link will get plots next to each other, so we could probably even build some sort of Scottish-based Grand Line empire. Established Titles also plants a tree with every order and works with global charities on restoration efforts. Go to establishedtitles.com to shop their Black Friday sales and get an additional 10% off using code GRANDLINE and help support the channel. So do that thing, but for now it's back to you. Me. But this leads nicely into step 2 of our 3-part master plan to ruin your mind brain, which is objects can come to life. Putting Enma aside for a second, this bold statement is actually old news. Scientists like Vegapunk or hungry hag sorcerers like Big Mom have been finding ways to imbue objects with life since long before your father decided to imbue your mother with you. However, Parvision pointed out something that I'd completely forgotten about, which is like a whole new layer of this delicious theory lasagna. And it's a starfish. His name is Papug. Say hi to Papug, please. And in One Piece chapter number, this one, Papug explains his origins as having believed he was a human when he was a child. However, by the time he found out that Gaspy was a starfish, it was too late to change. Going on to state, the mind is a powerful thing. In this world, you can do anything you put your mind to. Papug then went on to walk the talk that he'd been talking about and became a successful entrepreneur with his criminal brand, which Nami claims are sold for criminal prices. And something more recent that cements willpower as the greatest force of this world is obviously Gear 5th, which has brought up all kinds of questions about the power of the imagination and just how limitless one's potential is with the right will powering it. Granted, Papug was never an object. He was always a living thing, but by that same logic, so are all of the other quote-unquote objects who factually have their own wills and personalities. And the obvious example of that is the Going Merry. That ship was 100% alive, and not only that, but it managed to manifest its own physical presence in the Club Ultimate, something that was able to physically repair and otherwise interact with the world. Merry had a very benevolent and caring personality. However, when we return to the world of swords, things get a bit more volatile. The Sandai Kitetsu was famously referred to by Zoro as a quote problem child, and had a habit of throwing a bit of a hissy fit whenever most people tried to wield it, thus leading to it and the rest of the Kitetsu set being labeled as cursed. Zoro had to pass a very specific test for the Sandai Kitetsu to deem him worthy of using it for slice cutting. But that was nothing compared to Enma's test, because that sword, that allegedly inanimate object, was ready to kill Zoro if he was unworthy. So my conclusion is that 1, swords are pricks, and 2, the greater the quality of the sword, the more intense the test to wield the sword. And right now in the series, there is no greater sword than Drakeo Mihawk's Yoru. Yoru is actually by far the most iconic sword in all of One Piece. Its impact on pop culture can be seen through the Man-at-Arms series deciding to forge a real Yoru, or even the crafty Transformer forging his own cardboard Yoru. In fact, the only people who weren't in awe of Yoru were 4 kids who decided to engage in the sword equivalent of circumcision by clipping down the crossguard, which I imagine was because of, crosses and Jesus and religion and such. But seeing Yoru like this is kind of like seeing a shaved German shepherd. You were once a fearsome looking wolfen boy, but now you're just a 6-piece bucket of family lols. I hope you enjoyed that joke, because from here on out things are getting serious. Mr. Drakeo Mihawk, if that is indeed your real name, you are not what you portray yourself to be, because all of our evidences bring us to step 3 of the master plan, which is the conclusion that Yoru is alive and Mihawk is actually a manifestation of the blade who exists to serve as a test to judge the swordsman worthy of wielding him. Okay, so I know I took some big leaps there. To be honest, it's because I thought having a 3-step plan sounded much better than having a 4 or 5-step plan. And having said that, now all I can think about is, what are you doing, step plan? But in mere minutes, all of this is going to be shockingly plausible. Because something that no one has ever done, to the best of my knowledge, is look at the series through the perspective of Yoru. POV, you're Yoru. You're the greatest sharp object in the world, and you've spent an awfully long time waiting for someone to be worthy of wielding you. However, each and every candidate that has found you has been disappointing, to the point where you, as a sword, start to believe that the only person good enough for you is you. Yoru gets so sick and tired and bored of waiting that it manifests itself in order to seek out a worthy swordsman. It comes to life, and just like a 13-year-old in their very first online game, it has to create a new name. In this case, let's say Dracula Van Hawkslayer 69, which, like all of our first handles, Yoru would come to regret and refine it to the more socially acceptable Drakeo Mihawk. But the thing is, if you look at Mihawk with your eyes, the dude even looks like a sword. He has sharp eyesight, sharp facial hair, and of course is a superbly sharp dresser. Very interestingly, the word Yoru means night. So when Knight is choosing a home for himself, Kuragana Island as a perpetually dark and gloomy environment is perfection. I mean, it has everything. Darkness, mandrills, more darkness, and even an impossible toilet. Not that Yoru, as a sword, probably defecates anyway. No, he more than likely just leaves the toilet there to confuse the guests. But really, if I'm Yoru, then all I need right now is a well-endowed goth waifu by my side, and we're all set to go. Set to go out into the world and discover a worthy swordsman, that is. And I think we all know just who Yoru found. His fiercest rival, Redhead Shanks. A swordsman whose duels with Mihawk sent echoes all throughout the Grand Line. Strong, skilled, and willed, everything was perfect. Until it wasn't. After an incident involving a rubber boy, a mountain bandit, and a big old sea snake, Shanks returned to the Grand Line, or I should say, most of Shanks returned to the Grand Line. Roughly 10% of him remained behind in East Blue in the form of his left arm. And after this event, Yoru received what I can only imagine was the sword equivalent of blue balls. But why would that crush the idea of him challenging Shanks? I mean, the greatest swordsman in the world with one arm is still the world's greatest swordsman. Well, Parvision proposes it's because Yoru has a strict requirement that those who wield it must have 2 arms. Because to be fair, it is indeed a big boy sword and unlikely to reach its full potential just being swung-a-dung around one-handed. But after this, Yoru was distraught. He lost all hope of ever finding someone capable of passing its merciless test. And so he took up a position as a warlord of the sea and retired to a quiet life tending to his cabbage farming. Those cabbages, by the way, according to One Piece world logic, probably have wills and personalities of their own. I mean, just think about it this way. We all assume that Mihawk lives this very loner lifestyle. But in reality, Kuragana Island is absolutely packed with objects to talk to. Monkeys, cabbages, toilet. Mihawk has an abundance of friends around every corner. And yet he still feels ever so empty because he's not fulfilling his true purpose as a sword. And so every now and then he ventures fruitlessly into the Grand Line, doing a slice here and a chop there, until on one fatesome day, he encountered the future world's greatest swordsman. So Parvision now points to a series of great lines by Kozaburo Ippomatsu and even Zoro himself.
Let's read what Kozaburo said in chapter 1033 together, real quick. He says, a great blade can see into you. It chooses only the swordsman who best suits it. Then we get Ippomatsu saying, a sword chooses its wielder.
And then Zoro said that Enma chose him and is now testing him. In much the same way that Yoru found Zoro on that day in the irrelevant waters of East Blue, the Great Blade saw into Zoro and sought to test him. And Zoro passed that initial test. A test to see if his spirit and willpower were worthy. I mean, obviously his everything else was lacking, but yeah, that's fine. We can fix that. After which Mihawk says, strive with your whole heart and mind to best this blade. Not best me, best this blade. To be fair, immediately after that, Mihawk says surpass me, so I don't think we should read too much into Mihawk's prior flowery language. But he was drawn to Zoro. He saw through Zoro, and he said that he would wait for Zoro, which is exactly the sort of thing that a sword would say. A few months later, Zoro would rock up on Mihawk's doorstep and beg to be trained. And Mihawk has a bit of a chuckle, he did a bit of a ho 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 ho. But this could not be more perfect. A sword not only testing its user, but actively training its user to wield it, which I actually imagine would have probably led to some unintentional homoeroticism with Mihawk saying stuff like, no, Zoro-kun, this is how you must grip me.
Huh?
I mean, this is how you must grip the sword. The sword is what I meant. But the test for the world's greatest blade was so brutal that even after 2 years of training, Zoro was still not ready. And so Yoru continued to mill around, just, waiting patiently, having a bit of a fling with the goth waifu he'd previously wished for, and then subsequently being dumped by the world government and having to form an alliance with a clown. Your standard sword problems, really. We've all heard the story before. And speaking of problems, does this theory have any? Well, yes. Yeah. In fact, it has its own Santoriu's worth of problems. 1, we've seen Mihawk as a child. 2, we've seen Yoru personified by Oda. And 3, the idea of Zoro using a two-handed blade just feels a bit off. However, to those I say, 1, the Merry Manifestation was also a child, so perhaps they can mature in form. 2, the personification of Yoru may just be based on the person who crafted it, much like how Kozaburo made Enma, and yet its manifestation is potentially a Grim Reaper. And 3, I like Zoro and I like swords, so I'm generally just happy if Zoro was cutting things no matter what that blade is. And like person swords aside, I actually think it would be really cool to see Zoro use Yoru, even if it's only for a special and likely desperate occasion. But just to clarify, I do not take this idea seriously. Nor should anyone take what any One Piece YouTubers have to say seriously. Like, legit, we are all just dudes in rooms. It's a really cool idea, and the originator Parvision is a creator who specializes in having fun right on the border of plausibility. And in the end, One Piece isn't about the big epic reveals, the punch fighting, or the mysteries. It's about enjoying the journey and the friends we made along the way. And in this case, the friends Mihawk made along the way are monkeys, cabbages, and of course, good old toilet. So let's continue the journey now with this video, which you can watch while you're doing your dishes, so I look forward to seeing you there.